Many thanks for giving me the floor. I'm Victor Hartong from the Netherlands Enterprise Agency. I'm a national contact point for the Horizon Europe Cluster 3, Civil Security for Society, and also national focal point for the European Defence Fund. So we've already seen some slides about the European Defence Fund. I will just do some slides in addition to this, and also as a quick reminder, this is a brief introduction to a program that is actually quite complex. So let me just give you the next slide. So what are the goals of the EDF? Basically, the European Union set up the EDF to get more strategic autonomy for the European Union. Next to that, they also want to increase the defense industry within the European Union, again, to enhance this strategic autonomy. Second to that, they want to support the defense research and development industry, which also would enhance this strategic autonomy. So basically all points towards that. And next to that, there's also cost saving edge, where they want to, well, sort of promote that the member states will buy the same equipment. So when missions they do collaborative missions, that they don't have to send 3 different technician teams for the equipment they send out. Next to that, there's a pretty big funding for the European Defence Fund. It's 7.9 billion for the program until 2027. Next to that, there are actually high funding rates for this program. So for the research goals that Zeva just spoke about, there's actually 100% financing. It's not for all activities. The research goals are actually limited in what activity you can do. So that's why Zeva also said that the commercial side on research goals can be limited. The development goals have more possibilities for more activities, but those funding rates are limited. So they are not 100%. Typical example is for design, there's 65%, and for prototyping is, for example, 20%. Well, in that case, you can look for additional co-financing for these activities. For that, you can contact well, actually me, but there's a co-finance from Ministry of Defense and from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, but I will share some details about that later. Here I also gave the categories of the EDF. So there are several categories on which the European Union wants to promote the research. Space is one of them. I did not include the calls as Zeva did. I will focus on the space calls for now, which is a responsive space system. I will just read this from the slide. Innovative multi-sensor space-based Earth observation capabilities towards persistent and reactive intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, and a space-based missile early systems. And as you can see with the RADADA, it is a research action, a development action, and another development action. Furthermore, the EDF program is interesting for SMEs because there are various stimulation incentives to include SMEs, and that's also for the traditional defense sector. So examples are that they want to promote cross-border SME participation, which will result in additional percentage points. And if a certain amount of percentage of the eligible cost is allocated to SMEs, you also get an additional percentage on top of these financing rates. So that means, for example, with the percentage I just mentioned for design, the activity, it means you get an additional financing on that activity. So you go from, let's say, 65% to 80% financing. Next step, there are open SME calls, which only SME calls can hand in their proposal. So other entities are not allowed. They are allowed to include research institutes, but only to a certain limit. Next to that, with the open SME calls, you can get business coaching while participating in this call. Next to that, also the SME participation is in the criteria for the proposal evaluation. So that means that you cannot just let the SME participate in your consortium and let them get a coffee for you, basically, because they have to have an active role and an active contribution, a valuable contribution within the consortium. So you cannot just let them use them for only the financing. We've just seen some eligibility rules, for example, that the consortium must consist of 3 legal entities from member states or associated states. There's only one associated state at this moment, which is Norway. Furthermore, of course, your company must be an established company that is ready for innovation. That means that if you are a very small SME with only 2 FTE, that means probably you're not ready for this program. So you must be ready to be an international player, but of course you don't have to be a very big company for this. Next to that, one of the eligibility rules is that there needs to be a full ownership, management, decision power, and the activity of the organization all needs to be within the member states or Norway in this case. So I will include Norway with the member states. Of course, they are an associated state, but that means that other countries cannot participate. Well, for a full explanation of these rules, I highly recommend to get the EDF regulation and the guide for applicants. There's just a very annoying banner here. I'll click to remove it. Guide for applicants, so you can review these eligibility rules themselves for yourself, and contact me if you have any questions about it, but I would recommend to do your own exploration at first hand. So I already started with this actually, so advice before you start, get acquainted with the EDF. Read the work program. The work program for 2022 has been released on the 25th of May. The guide for applicants, there's already one available. It's from 2021. The new guide for applicants, as far as I know, it has not been published yet. If you want to be informed when this is published, RVO has a mailing list, interest mailing list for the EDF. So make sure you register yourself if you want to get regular updates for when a new guide for applicants comes online, for example, or there are other activities that the Commission organizes for the EDF. And of course, make yourself known with the guide for applicants that will be published and the EDF regulation, although that's a pretty tough read, but well, at least give it a try. Of course, make yourself visible. Just now we've seen SEVA promote UpNet, that they are interested in joining an EDF call. That's the way to do it. Also join networking events and the matchmakings that will be organized on a national level, but also on an international level. So recently we've seen that the Commission has organized information days for the EDF. That was on the 30th June and the 1st of July. And they also organized matchmaking on these days. Next to that, on the funding and tender portal, you will find that you can do partner search announcement, where you can per call give your interest in a call. Make sure that you give a very clear description on what you expect in a partner and what you are looking for and what you can actually do yourself. Next to that, I already discussed this a little bit. For the development calls, not all costs are covered. So only the eligible costs are covered. They have to be give direct influence on the action. So indirect costs, which are not visible to the action, those are considered indirect costs. There is a construction for that. You can find that, for example, in the EDF regulation, how they deal with these indirect costs, and in the guide for applicants you can find how they consider these indirect costs. What are they exactly? Co-finance is then available from the Ministry of Defense and from the Ministry of Economic Affairs. In short, Ministry of Defense will publish on the RVO website what the priority list is. So they will give a priority list on which teams they will be interested in co-financing. This does not mean that when you give in a request that you will automatically receive this financing. That all has to do with the proposal you hand in at the Ministry of Defense, but in advance you can of course contact them and discuss with them what interests them and align with them how you should write this proposal so it is in their interest. Next to that, there's a co-finance from Economic Affairs. There, for that co-finance, there is not a priority list. There is, however, a limited budget. So not every activity is covered. So only, and out the top of my head, prototyping, testing, qualification, and certification activities are additionally funded. And next to that, of course, the project after evaluation should continue. So if you do not qualify for the EDF project, you will not receive money for this co-finance. Am I on time? Am I going over time? I'm on time. I'm in time. Next to that, we look at the ranking. So the highest ranked proposal will be financed first until the budget has been depleted. Next to that, there's another module which is first come, first serve. So there, the opening date of the co-finance from Economic Affairs is very important to keep in mind. That's for the module A, and the opening date is on the 1st of August at 9 a.m. Module A is to basically help an SME, it's only for SMEs, position themselves for joining a consortium. So for example, looking over a consortium agreement. For that, the SME can get help from an external consultant, at which they can receive 50% of the costs with a maximum of 5,000 euros. And the hourly rate that is maximum is 170 euros. So if you have an interest in that module, please contact me. That's also on the bottom of the slide. Contact your national focal point, and that is me. The contact details will be in the last slide, which I think will be shared. So what can you expect from us? Well, of course, we give advice. So we can schedule a conversation, a consultation, at which I can listen to what the company that you present does. And then I can maybe have a look at in which call that would fit. Of course, you can already send in which call you're interested in, and then we can have a look together. Second to that, if you're a consortium leader from the Netherlands, I can also do a proofreading of this proposal. I can not write the proposal for you, but I can at least tell you where the focus should lie, because I get a little bit more information because I'm in a national focal point network. And second to that, I can also help you find partners at which the Netherlands Industry of Security and Defense can also help you, and which I can get you in contact with them. That was basically my presentation. If you are interested in the EDF, get in contact with me. I can also link you up with the Ministry of Defense and the Netherlands Industry for Security and Defense. I think that's about it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Victor. In fact, we have a few questions for you, questions and remarks. Can you scroll up a little bit in the chat window, please? We have a question, first of all, from Martijn, which is a bit cryptic to me, but I'm sure you know what it means. Do you need an approval of NCP before applying? And can you tell us what NCP means?
Yeah, so as I said, I'll have a look at how can I stop my sharing?
Your sharing's already stopped.
It's stopped. Okay, very good. Yeah, of course, I cannot, as I said in the beginning, I gave a very brief introduction to the EDF. There are more eligibility rules. For example, development calls require that you get a letter of intent or a letter of support from the certain member states. It does not have to be all the member states. It has to be at the top of my head too. Of course, this is the minimum. So the more you get, the more chances I think you will have at getting your proposal evaluated very well in comparison to the others. So there are definitely more eligibility rules, but I think this does not apply for the research calls. So, but you do not have to get approval from me.
Okay, we have a remark from Linda. Linda, maybe you want to mention that yourself instead of me reading it out from the chat. You unmute yourself, Linda, and maybe.
Yeah, I think I read it in the chat. It's about whether Israel can receive funding. At this moment, Israel is not an associated country for the EDF, so it cannot participate in the calls. And that means that also if the company has investors that are from Israel, that means that if they have the decision power within the company, the management structure, for example, is organized within Israel, that means that that company cannot participate in the European Defence Fund.
Okay. What's the status of the UK at this moment, Victor?
I'm sorry?
Talk about Israel. What's the status of the UK in this regard?
The UK is also not a member state.
Okay. Very clearly.
So only member states and Norway as an associated country can participate in the EDF.
Okay, very clear.
And of course, we have the very interesting structure, for example, with Fokker and, for example, Fox IT, but their special structures have been made within the company and guarantees have been given, so they can participate. But there you enter a very complicated and gray area where guarantees need to be given. If you are want to participate and you do not meet these eligibility requirements, also you can also contact me and we can have a look at what needs to be done to give these guarantees.
Okay, okay, thank you. There's also a rather cryptic question from Andre, and maybe Andre can say something. I have one question about the EDF regulation that you mentioned. Can you perhaps put the link to that regulation in the chat? Is that something that's publicly available?
Yeah. Yes, that's publicly available. I can. I will put a link in the chat.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.